Moved and seconded to approve the agenda.
Call the
Okay, call the question.
Yes. Vote. Vote, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
I would prefer.
What was that?
Oh, you got warbly there, so
Oh,
you move to approve?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, or we already had a motion. Second.
Yes,
So all those in favor, yes.
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 All right.
Okay.
Okay, move to approve the consent agenda.
Or did you have any public
Just
comment?
that there's public contact.
Oh,
And,
Jesus, there's a hand up there.
Yeah. It's your turn.
Why don't we just put his name on there permanently? He's here every time.
Well, I don't always need to have stuff to talk about. Gary Kerr, ratepayer and budget committee chairman. Todd answered one of the questions I had with regard to the Beaver Creek radio location. In fact, he talked about alternative electrical capacity. That's a particular important there because I do not know if the Beaver Creek pumps are on the Redland PGE line or if they're on the one that starts just before you get to Idle on Beaver Creek Road, which is a separate PGE
So
trunk line.
the feeder that goes down Beaver Creek comes out of the Leland sub. They're at Leland and 213. And
And that's where we get it at Beaver Creek. Yeah.
that's where you get it at Beaver Creek, whereas you and I are on the
Redland.
Henry C13 out of Redland.
Yep, and it goes down all the
And
time.
you are too?
Yep,
Yep.
and so that's why I was asking him,
Yeah.
concerned about that. Also, with regard to the Oak Lodge location, I don't think there's auxiliary power there too. And one of the principles for the emergency system would be to make sure that we have alternative electrical at each location.
Did-
Preferably the
I think
southern
Don
end.
said,
Yeah,
I think
they
that's
do.
there. Yeah,
They do
that's
now.
part of the deal.
Okay.
Was
so-
that they would let us use a circuit off their standby system.
Okay, I didn't know if they didn't used to have a standby system there. So
But
that's
it's a
why I
new
was
tank and new everything.
Okay, so, and that would be true with any other site, that we have electrical, because that's an emergency system, and emergency system without alternative electricity is not good. So, I was glad to hear that, and that's what I wanted to ask about when I read the instructions, so, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. There was a motion on that, wasn't there?
Yep. But we still need to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Item 1 is, well, we got the new item 1 here, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, so but that's only, the consent agenda you need to go ahead and approve. You can do that all by one motion. The new agenda item actually is part of your informational reports, so that shouldn't.
Yeah, this is CA 1, not.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay.
So you have a motion, give a second?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. Sherry?
A second.
Yeah.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed.
So I do have a question on the, with Joe. Got anything to say about our Carver Spring Water Transmission Main project?
We're heroes.
We really are, more than you
Yeah,
know.
we're out of the way, and all the press is all talking about the new signals that are delayed and causing traffic problems. They didn't talk about that when.
I found that more than humorous, having been the traffic operations manager for a decade. The problem was started from low bid process first, that starts our problem. Nobody was willing to do it for the number that the county thought it should be done for, so they went out again, as you know, and this whole thing, which delayed and delayed and delayed, and then they decided to blame the problem on the tariffs, when I know good and well that if you're willing to pay a premium, you can have poles in 6 weeks anytime you want them. You just buy a spot in production, right, in somebody's plant. Unfortunately, the plant that we used to buy them from, Northwest Signal over in Tualatin, closed and moved their operation to Vancouver, but you can still buy them for that thing. But they just thought the thing in the paper was kind of hilarious, that that's what they were hanging their hat on.
That's the only thing, good.
Good, nicely done.
now we're ready to move on to informational reports.
There we go.
Okay,
That's Carol.
now it's, okay, Carol, it's your turn.
Good evening, Commissioners. Here's our fourth quarterly update, and this update is a little bit different than quarters 1, 2, and 3, because when we get to year end, we've got a lot of other processes that we need to finish to generate our financial statements for audit. So one of the things that makes a moving target on the numbers that I report to you is that we're still accepting invoices from vendors for activity that took place in June. We actually had our cutoff today, but if we got anything big in, we would still accrue that back. I don't anticipate any large items coming in at this time. We've reached out to a lot of those vendors to make sure that they get their bills in timely, so we should be pretty close. We also go through and we look at all of the accounts, and so we have made some reclassifications and moving from one account to another to kind of get everything settled the way it should be. And we also, every year, we look at what our estimated water usage is between the last meter read date and June 30th. And so we will do an accrual of unbilled water sales. That's an estimate that we put in the system every year, and this year, based on what our June bills were, I anticipate that to increase our revenues a little bit more, just because the June billing that was read through, like June 8th to 15th, was really high, so then we've got those extra days to the end of the month. So we'll start looking at the general fund revenue, and I've actually gone back and looked historically to kind of get a sense of where our revenue hits based on the time of the year, so a percentage of the total for the year. And so you can see my budget line, instead of being a straight line across, which is not realistic for the kind of business that we're in, it is kind of jumping up and down based on what we've seen historically in previous years. And you can see that we've had quite a few months where we were above budget, typically on the residential side.
Well, year over year, it's huge. I mean,
So
it's just
when you're looking at
astronomical.
year over year, you're seeing kind of the combined effect of greater usage and rate increases.
So
as
you
far as
can't
the
explain that kind of change in more people? Is it,
Well, this is a lot weather related. Like I said, this June looked like June 2015
Yeah,
as far as
true.
the consumption.
have you gone out another year?
Yeah. So, well, this is month to month.
Yeah, but if you look
So-
at July 17.
Yeah.
Or if you would have,
Well-
I would gonna bet June was, if you had one more bars, you could do that, yeah.
Well, and remember, we've got, we bill residentials on
Opposite months.
the even months,
Yeah.
and we bill commercials, and the commercials tend to be a little more even, they're a little bit less volatile, and the residential, you really see the increased usage in the warm months. So the August bill, which covers from mid-June to mid-August, the October bill, which covers from mid-August to mid-October, and then it kind of slows down a little bit, and then you see the June is jumping back up again. And that depends on whether or not we have warm weather, early warm weather.
So wouldn't you agree that the June 17 would be less than July 17?
June 17 is going to be closer to June 18 because June is the residential versus
Okay.
commercial. So commercial doesn't peak as much and tends to peak later. So, and I've got,
I got a neighbor that runs 2 sprinklers around the clock.
we were talking to a customer
I'm serious, I
today.
just can't believe it.
We were talking to a customer today, I overheard the conversation that the woman called and said that her husband was watering their plants 5 times a day. So we're in the middle of reading now for the August bills, and we have seen some high usage. We're making a lot of phone calls to customers saying, what's going on at your property? Is there any reason why your bill should be this high? If you're watering, yeah, and a lot of people are watering. So, but as you can see also, our budget forecast was 11.6, we've actually brought in 12.7 million. So we are more than $1 million above what we forecast. Now, bear in mind, and we've had this conversation before, I'm pretty conservative on forecasting the revenues. I don't want to anticipate revenues that aren't gonna show up. So we base our expenditure budgets on how much money we have available. So if I say that we're gonna sell $12.5 million worth of water, and we end up with an $11 million year, if we budgeted our expenditures based on that 12.5, we could find ourselves in trouble.
You don't ever do that.
So we do a really conservative budget on the revenue side to make sure that we don't have that problem.
But because of the economy, I think people are being less concerned about where their money is going. You know, oh, don't worry about the sprinkler, I'll get it later, or let's fill the swimming pool a little bit more every day, and really that. And so, that and with the heat, you know, we're gonna end up with over 30 days above 90 degrees easily.
Yes.
And we could still get 100-degree days in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So those numbers could be significantly higher.
And I will say that as we're talking to customers, my staff is doing a conservation message. Number one, if you're gonna use the water, we hope that people have the wherewithal to pay that bill. So we are recommending conservation because of the river flows and, you know, all of the other good reasons why we should conserve. So when we look at our revenues, water sales that's the lion's share, right? So it's 97% of our, over 90%, up to 96% of our revenue that comes in is from water sales. So this graph kind of mirrors the other one, and we'll flip back real quick, you can kind of see the peaks. It's, you know, pretty much the same. The little red part at the top is the wholesale revenue that we generate from our sales to Sunrise. And so on that, that's where you can see that our increase in revenue is from water sales. So with and this includes the wholesale, whereas the other number was just the general fund and wholesale comes in.
So if we sell that much water, as much water this year as we did in July, those numbers will be larger. I mean, you've already hit your mark.
Yeah. And when we do the budget, we anticipate the rate increase, but I don't anticipate any volume increases. That's one of the ways that I do
Well, that's how you back it up.
the conservative estimates. So now looking at expenditures, we look in the budget book that you have, you look at that budget and it tells you, you know, the total two-year budget. But now I'm just comparing year one to our year one budget, year one actuals to our year one budget. And our year one budget for expenditures, this includes personnel services, materials and services, and our capital outlay. But I didn't add in the transfers from one fund to another. And so our year one budget was $9.2 million, and our actual to date is $8.5 million. Now this does count all those invoices that came in July that belong to June. They've been added in there. So
And this includes all the stuff that transfers from the bonded dollars back to cover the costs for our staff.
That's right. So the personnel services
Right.
dollars in the general fund
Right.
are reduced by the
Exactly.
amount of labor that is
Yeah.
applied to our capital
Good,
projects.
okay.
Correct. So when we're looking at our expenditures, the personnel services came in at 49.2% of the biennial budget, so the two-year budget and how much we spent in year one. Materials and services is about 48%, and the capital outlay is 26.1%. Capital outlay, by its nature, comes in big chunks, so it can easily catch up in the next year of the biennium. We're gonna keep looking at the costs. We're gonna keep verifying that we've got accounts in the right place. One of our recent entries that we just did was the inventory valuation. So we do an average cost on the inventory, so every year we have to either increase the expense or reduce it based on that average cost versus, you know, how much we paid for this batch of stuff. So we're making some of those adjusting entries. We are not done by any means. We also have overhead to book to capital projects for the external work. We have booked the overhead for the internal labor, but not for the external work.
So the capital outlay number, the 26.1, that's as of June 30?
Yes.
Okay.
This is not capital, this is not CIP fund or bond construction fund.
Right.
This
And
is
it-
just
yeah, no.
buying large stuff in the general
Yeah, no,
fund.
just the day-to-day stuff, yeah, right. And so, you, going forward for the next 12 months, you've got 75%.
Yeah, and we, a lot of it, like,
Some of it's
we'll do our
earmarked.
next, yeah. we-
Well, and that's good, that's, so
Vehicle
what
on
others,
order, we
yeah,
have, you
yeah,
know,
good.
that sort of stuff.
yeah, I just wanna
So
make sure we're
just
gonna
doesn't
spend
show
that.
up- It doesn't
Yeah.
show up yet.
Yeah, no, I just wanna make sure that we have a plan to spend
Yeah.
that, because,
One of our
That's
big
the
items is
expectation.
a hydrant truck, or not one of those. We have two different valve maintenance truck, and so that's a pretty big dollar item, and we haven't received that yet, so it's not included in this.
So there's a variety of things on order that we haven't received yet, that will.
yeah, I just wanna make sure that there were.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
And
just,
that we do
Yeah.
an analysis and we look at that and we say, okay, we listed these things in capital outlay, are we working towards them?
yeah.
Because we don't want to get to next May or June and say, oh, we need to order that thing. Because then it's not gonna hit against this budget, so we are keeping track of that.
I just worked for ODOT and they did weird things, they wouldn't let you spend, would not let you spend until the last 3 months of the biennium.
And
Right?
that might not be enough lead time for some.
It isn't, it clearly isn't, and so what would happen is, but it was a plan, they wanted to sweep those dollars, right? And that's where they got those funny buckets of money that people didn't know anything about. That, it was just crazy.
Well, and, you know,
So you starve for, you know, for 15, 18 months, and then all of a sudden you've eaten so much you're sick, and then you can't figure out what to do because you don't have the labor, right, to do anything with it, so.
and, you know, for us as a water district, the money doesn't go anywhere else, or, you know, anything we don't spend stays in the ending fund balance, but I don't want to come back and ask the board and the budget committee for exactly the same money for the same thing, just because we didn't get around to it, so we try to avoid that.
Yeah, good.
So, Moss Adams, our auditors, will be here the week of October 8th, and that's where they do their field work. They'll come in, they'll look at lots of our transactions and make sure that we've accounted for things in the appropriate way. And we will plan on having them present their audit findings and their opinion at the December 13th board meeting. So, some areas to watch, and we talked about this a little bit at the last work session. In personnel services, we think that we need an additional engineering position to help us keep up with the capital work that's going on with both the backbone and CIP. But there's also a lot of private project work that this position could also be helping, which is charged to the general fund. So we kind of look at that and say, what's the total cost? What percentage do we think might be in capital improvements versus the general fund? But that would be a supplemental budget item to
So what
look
kind
at.
of person you looking for? An FE type person or a PE type person?
So this is a little bit what we talked about last time, so, frankly, a person we can get right now. is a little bit of a
Yeah.
challenge, but, so this is probably more of an entry.
An FE type, yeah, waiting for the PE. I think it's, philosophically, I think it's good to grow your own. Right, so if you got somebody that's recently out of school, that's got a little bit of experience, wants to learn, then you can have the engineering team here, to get them dialed in the way you want them, and so that's one way to do that, but.
Yeah, we're looking for someone that has a lot of flexibility. One of the other things we need to address is, you know, one of the things that Adam did as a principal engineer was he was also managed and supervised the water distribution.
So did you plug a person into ops?
So when we we need to do that, we're working on that.
So you haven't done that
We
yet?
have not
Oh,
done
okay.
the position yet.
Well, that should be up
We were
there.
trying to grow something internally and
Yeah.
that didn't work, so.
Okay, so would you potentially put something in there for that, or is there an?
It's actually, here's the goofy part is, so it's how you slice and dice it. You
Yeah,
had
absolutely.
the question the other day, and so you were commenting about how we had 3 engineers. Well, technically, yes, we had 3 PEs, however,
Well, we have
part of
two.
that, part of that was, part of one PE's job was to manage the water distribution.
Yeah,
And so with Adam moving up to the chief engineer, we don't have that person doing that anymore, so.
you don't have that function covered.
Right, and so it seems like the more immediate need is to try to address that, put in some supervisory type position for water distribution, but still recognizing that we still need the additional engineering help, which is where this request is coming from. Plus, we know we have a retirement coming up that we want to have somebody that can give us some flexibility to help out with some additional inspecting and that sort of stuff too. So.
So am I
Looking
hearing
for somebody that has a
that
lot more flexibility, that we,
so would you include that in the supplemental ask?
so that's that position.
That is that, okay,
Yeah.
so that is that, okay.
Okay. So in materials and services, again, I have just shown you that on our expenditures that we're under budget, you know, so we're doing fine. But we do have some areas to watch in this upcoming year of the biennium, and that's in the water purchases and treatment. And we've got kind of 3 components of that. So the first one is the Oregon City wheeling charges. We are almost there. Todd and I have a meeting next week with Oregon City to kind of go over the final results, and we'll figure out those exact numbers, and I can calculate an estimate.
Are you gonna bring Guido with you?
Guido?
I know a
The
couple,
good- the good news
I know
is
a couple that,
It's gonna be a little bit less than what we shared with you originally, so.
So the second thing is because of the cyanotoxin testing that's required. DEQ is picking up the cost of that initially, but by next spring, it'll be on us. So we will have some additional costs for testing. And then
so hold
also,
on, so did they pass that rule?
So they adopted the temporary rule
Uh-huh.
that have put water providers on a more frequent test schedule and broadened it out to who has to do the testing. So we're caught up in that. And so the good news is kind of the way they enticed everybody to accept it is they said, well, we'll have the DEQ lab process the test results for this first year. But from that point on, it's anybody's guess.
So it's a partially funded mandate.
Yes.
or initially funded.
Initially, that's a better way to put it, it's an initially funded mandate.
Just for 1 year.
Well,
Correct.
we don't know what exactly they're gonna do.
So wait a second, you're talking about OHA doing something, I mean, they don't have it.
Yeah, and they're looking for money left and right on
In the year.
other things, so I don't anticipate this being paid for by the state.
So funding if they want.
They don't have the money, period.
I'm not sure where they're getting the money today.
I know. Yeah, it's song and a prayer right now.
So additionally to that, we are planning on purchasing some extra powdered activated carbon and, what is it that Rob calls it, designer powder. So, which has greater capacity to remove cyanotoxins from the water should we run into that. We want to be ahead of the game. We want to be able to know before it gets to our intake and then have treatment in place that will effectively remove the cyanotoxins as it goes through our treatment plant. So there's a greater cost associated with that.
So those 3 bullets, right,
Mhm.
were not known when we did the budget,
Correct,
right? And so there's holes to plug.
correct.
So I think we need to have one more hole to plug in light of a potential for having to use the 1 MGD of well that we own. We've never been, we've heard lots of stories about the water, but we've never heard what it would cost to really use the water. Suzanne has talked to us about the testing that she's done and the kind of problems that there are, and the fact that it's not cheap, but we don't know what that not cheap means. So if we could tighten that up a bit, I think it would be.
To install some sort of treatment
Yeah,
system there.
so having been one of the person that lived off that well, that hated every minute of it, started buying lots of bottled water, not to mention what it did to the pipes, it was just it was a mess, you know, because when they weren't mixing as much as, you know, when they were using more well than South Fork water, it got to be pretty nasty. And I can't imagine it being any better today than it was 25 years ago, so. And so that's, so those of us on the south side that have to deal with that, I'm sure you don't have enough people to answer the phone when you fire that thing up.
That's
And-
our
yeah.
concern.
Yeah,
We had, I believe, at the time we were mixing, during the summer, during
Mhm.
peak.
Yeah, right.
30%,
yeah,
well, it mixed in with what we were purchasing from
Yeah.
South Fork.
yeah, there were days that it was 40, 60, and not much fun.
Yeah. So, and then the next item is in capital outlay, which was the presentation at the work session, the cost of phase 2 and 3 of the VHF radio system, because we don't have those dollars included in the budget. And again, we can look at what we have spent in capital outlay to date, and we can validate if we have saved money in certain areas. So is it, have we just not gotten to that item, or did we get an item and get a smoke and deal, so we've got a little bit of extra? And we'll look at all of that so that we know how much to ask for the capital outlay for the radios.
So if you're gonna throw a dart at materials and services and capital outlay total number, I don't think it adds up to what the extra revenue collected just this
Oh,
year.
certainly.
Not anywhere near?
No, it.
And
it
that
will
doesn't
be-
include August.
Right, it will be less than that. And so one of the things when we do a supplemental budget is we have some options of how do you fund this? And in this case.
Where do you pull the money from?
Yeah, in this case, we can fund it from, hey, we've got more revenue than we anticipated, and so that will offset the increased cost. The other
Because-
option is to use the contingency, but we don't really need to do that because we do.
So
have-
the only two long-term items would be the wheeling charges, right?
Right.
Recurring costs, right? And recurring costs for additional water testing for sanotaxis in the summertime,
Correct.
right?
And so.
And if we had to use the powder active carbon, we
Yeah.
got to replace it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But you have some time to figure out how you plug those numbers.
Okay, so that's all I got on general fund, unless somebody has, if there's other questions.
And so next month is the month we do that, what you're
That's
planning
when
to
we'll
do,
be
the supplemental
bringing
stuff?
the
Yeah.
supplemental
Okay.
budget request to the board. So now we'll look at the other funds. SDC revenues, another bright spot. We are at 146% of our first year estimate, so we collected 73% of the biennial budget, and we're halfway through. We have gotten more requests than we anticipated, and again, we do conservative estimates on this. The benefit of this is as this money comes into the SDC reserve fund, then we have another funding source for some capital projects as we go down the road.
So make sure people understand, that money can only be spent for capital stuff.
Absolutely.
It's not,
And-
can't be used for
and-
materials and services, can't be used for paying people,
Right.
it has to be used for capital improvement.
And it has to be capital improvements that are determined to be valid use of system development charge money. So as we look at the next biennium, we'll look at that reserve amount, and in the CIP budget, maybe we'll say, hey, we're gonna get this much from our capital reserve, and we're gonna get this much from our system development charges reserve. And so that will help us have sufficient funding for capital improvements down the road. So looking at the CIP fund, and this number is a lot different than the number I told you guys at the work
Yeah,
session.
it
And
is.
what I discovered as I was starting to do my analysis and providing information to Adam, we run reports on the project numbers, but I discovered that we had some construction dollars for the Carver Bridge that were being charged to the capital improvement projects fund instead of the bond construction fund. So we moved those, which increased how much we'd spend on bond construction, but it reduced the amount in the capital improvement projects. And also in our budget, we had moved the Carver Bridge project itself. In the budget, it was in capital improvements. We moved it to bond construction and combined it with the spring water. So we knew that we would be a little bit low on CIP and a little bit higher on bond construction. We do have some projects coming up that are kind of being dictated to us, and we've talked about this before, maybe not when Commissioner French was here, but we've talked about how these other agencies, the county or ODOT, might have projects that impact our water lines. And so we are looking at some projects coming up that could strain the budget for the ODOT city, Clackamas County, DD2.
I don't think either one of those are in final design though. Joe, do you know?
Well, the Sunnyside portion is scheduled right now to begin next spring.
Okay, so they have final design done?
Well,
I didn't think so.
they're anticipating 90% in
Yeah.
September.
Yeah, bidding after the first of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they want all the utilities out of the way before.
yeah.
So
So-
we're,
We know.
Yeah.
we're getting pushed pretty hard by the utility court.
So we're looking at our costs that will happen before next June 30th.
How many lineal feet of that has to get moved?
Well, it's portions.
But pieces?
They are basically installing a whole another storm drainage system. And that is at a higher elevation than the existing one in order to funnel all of the runoff to a new treatment facility. The lower existing storm sewer will stay there as a bypass. So all of that pipe now is in conflict with all of our feed lines to the mall.
And so poor engineering on their part is our problem on our, that's nice,
I'll make
yeah.
judgment calls.
That's a deal, yeah. I know who those engineers were.
They're currently doing potholing to find out whether there's a physical conflict. We know it crosses, but we don't know elevation.
So how can they be pressing for a utility to move their facilities when they don't even know the data?
Well,
That
we're
makes it awful tough for you
anticipating
guys.
having to drop our line to feed the promenade. You know, there's a number of them that we might have conflict with. There's also a new ODOT sign bridge that's going in, and that's the current request, is to relocate our 12-inch to make room for the foundation for that new sign, which is a significant impact. That line feeds the Monarch, big office building, and Red Robin. So we're looking at alternatives to backfeed all of that. Of course, the pipes are all under concrete road.
They are, all of them, yeah.
I'm trying to set up a meeting to hopefully move their foundation. Not sure how successful it will.
Because those sign bridges all belong with the state. They have,
Exactly.
yeah, they have, under the permit for that with the EIS, they were able to keep their facilities in the county right away, so.
The guide sign for the freeway
Yeah.
coming up.
Okay, so now moving to the CIP bond construction fund. The year one budget was 6.6 million, actual to date is 6.8 million. And we've still got a few things like the overhead calculation to add to that. Not really a concern from my look at all of this stuff because number one, we're trying to spend bond proceeds by next March.
Yeah.
Number two, we did move the Carver Bridge piece into this fund, so we'll be monitoring that and see where our spending is, but I think we're gonna be okay. We do have $1.5 million of the funding on the 152nd Avenue Reservoir was not bond proceeds. So when we look at how much we spent of bond proceeds, we have to reduce it by that 1.5 million that we got from Sunrise for their portion of the 152nd Avenue Reservoir.
And then another one.
Yes, and that'll come next year in June. So that gets our bond proceeds spent to about 40%. I think in Adam's report, it's a little bit higher. But I think we're still kind of on track. It's gonna be a squeaker, but I think we're in pretty good shape. So the current projects that are in construction, 152nd Avenue, Redland Reservoir, and the Carver Spring Water is essentially complete, so. So that's what I have as far as our fourth quarter presentation. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Have we bid the other piece of pipe from 152 to the bridge?
24?
Yeah.
No, that's still 60% design-ish. Ish. Like that ish word. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. That helps. So, I guess one question, so the radio thing, you're gonna go for the whole thing, I hope?
So, yeah, any guidance you have, I was gonna kind of set up as options, but.
Yeah, so-
Full meal, we're looking for guidance,
So-
so.
If you wanna reduce the amount of the cost of that radio stuff, you could probably shave 10 or 15% off that if you can get it done by December. Rather than
Oh.
carrying it through the winter. So you know. Yeah, trying to build radio in the wintertime is very expensive.
Oh, this is Oregon, it's just gonna
Yeah.
rain.
TVWD found that out. Trying to build a radio project from December through March.
Okay.
And even Neil isn't there anymore.
No.
I don't know, I just, that's all I know.
All right, ready for management report?
Yes.
All right, so, of course, management report is included in your packet as agenda item 2. The other thing I'll point out is in your folder, you also have the newsletter that will be going out to customers, and you also have your monthly update. In the monthly update, I'll just point out a couple things. One, we did put some additional information, starting on page 11, as it relates to, or I'm sorry, 10, 11, and 12, as it relates to what we're doing about tracking the algal blooms in the watershed and stuff. So I thought that might be of interest to the board. We have active programs, so we're sharing some of the results from that. And then also, of course, a little bit of good news as it relates to kind of the river flows seem to have stabilized a little bit, but as Commissioner McNeil points out, we do have some additional hot days coming up, so.
It's kind of weird, so the river kind of took this, what you did, it dropped below 650
Yeah.
for 2 days, and then now it's between 7 and 8, and
Yeah.
just holding right there. And I don't know where that water's coming from, I can't explain that, but, and neither can the folks at USGS. I gave them a phone call and said, are you sure your gauges aren't failing? Because that could be a problem too.
Yeah.
We did that, remember we had that happen in 15?
So we do, oh shoot, I forgot to write down, but those gauges calibrated on a frequent basis
Yeah.
and stuff, so. But right now, the good news is the flows are well above any trigger actions for us. And what we'll be watching real close and what's gonna be of interest is when those trigger levels jump in September. So we'll wanna watch that. So that's some of the information in the monthly report. As far as the information in your packet, just a couple of things to highlight is we talked a little bit about the additional cyanotoxin monitoring and stuff the state's doing. So it's kind of revamped a little bit of what the Clackamas rural water providers are doing as it relates to our testing, where initially they were doing a lot more testing, but we've kind of backed off of some of that since now the state's requiring all the intakes on that area to do the testing. So we're trying to do a better job of coordinating that. One thing to note is also kind of under the CRWP report is we are gonna have an exercise where we actually get out in the water and deploy booms and other equipment to try to simulate if there was a spill upstream of the intake. So actually get out and play and test with some of the equipment. So this will be done conjunction with a number of different agencies. It's not just CRW and that we will be using Riverside Water. Real quick, and just kind of looking ahead on some things, just again, want to emphasize and stress that our work session and special meeting for August is going to be on Thursday, August 30th, so that's a different date than normal, so that should be all in your calendars, and you have the calendar invite. Also,
So speaking of the calendar, so I go up and I sent an email to Karen and said, the thing isn't on there. There's a trick you have to do with that friggin' calendar. You have to click on the day in order to get things to come up. So if you look at the calendar, if you just bring it up, right, and you're looking at the week, there's nothing there. But if you click on the day, then all the stuff, then it fills the events. I mean, I read my kid and I said, what's going on with this calendar? He said, oh, hold on here. So we screwed it down to a week, and then when you click on the box for the day, for the third, once I knew what day to click on, you, 30, I went to click on it, then it populates the days, the events on the day. When you just look at it, it looks like there's nothing there.
Yeah,
No
sometimes
wonder.
if there's
Yeah.
too much,
Okay.
it shrinks it.
well,
Well, sometimes if there's too much, it shrinks it.
but if that's too much,
Yeah, like there's too much event.
Yeah, so you get
So what-
nothing.
Yeah,
So then if
and
you
then
click on it,
There's a
and if you
little
click on the
button, you
day,
have to
then
click.
it shows, populates the events on the day. But you
Yeah,
don't
you
know, if you don't know what day to look for, you don't know.
okay, we'll play around with that.
Yeah,
That
well-
sounds like an odd issue. So,
Just gotta learn how to run
You have
the
to
thing.
Well-
maneuver it.
should be stuff that's apparent, however you're looking at it, so. Speaking of dates, so, just tentatively, the Clackamas River Water Providers are doing their annual watershed tour, so, they're actually talking about maybe doing a float on the river where you float by all the different, many of the intakes and so on. So they did this a number of years ago, and it seemed to be pretty popular, so. They're tentatively looking at that Saturday, August 6th. I'm sure it's gonna be a beautiful day. Won't, no rain, none of that. you
August
know.
6th?
Yeah, October, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
October 6th, thank you. Jeez, I'm
I was
still
reading.
yeah, so I'm sure it'll be, well, August 6th was a beautiful day.
Yeah, it was, yeah, I believe you're right.
Yeah, so it's always best to do it. A couple items that aren't in the management report, just to let you know, is I do want to talk a little bit about the South Fork Water Board transmission main repair. We can give you a quick update. Not a whole lot more to add from the email that you received late last week as it relates to that. Still doing a lot of investigative work. I think one of the things to note is that South Fork has an engineering firm on board. We've had some geotech specialists look at it to evaluate the situation. They've also had some additional leak investigation folks look at it as well.
So what piece is it?
So it's the piece that goes from the treatment plant down, cross country down to, yeah.
So it's from
So
Hunter.
it's the plant, so if you,
So the line comes from the plant down Hunter, right, to the pump station?
so there's a line that actually, and Joe, you can help me out, there's a line that crosses, it literally goes down the hill, oh shoot.
To Anchor Way.
There's
It's the
an
one that's
undeveloped
used to
road
feed
called
Anchor
High
Way.
Road.
Yeah, right, to go up to Division Street Pump Station.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, so going back to the study that C.H. Hill did a decade ago, they identified that as a problem in that study a decade ago, and their fix was to build a parallel 24-inch line, right? So that in the wintertime, when the demand was low, you could shut off the big line, do maintenance on it, live off the 24, and in the summertime, you had them both to solve that head problem they were having at Division Street, so.
So, building on that, so it's actually they're now calling it the bypass line that they want to construct here. So, there's multiple steps. So first, we're doing they're doing all the investigative work and so on. So step one is they want to make sure that the site is dewatered and that the leak isn't causing bigger problems. And so South Fork is working on getting a contractor to drill some holes that can be used to dewater the site. make sure everything's stabilized and so on. And so the leak would continue to be monitored, but the leak would continue until sometime in the fall when this bypass line is constructed. And so that's step two. So step two, actually at their meeting on August 16th, South Fork will be considering whether to expedite a project that's been on the books for a number of years. And to connect the transmission main in Hunter to the 30-inch transmission main that's in Hiram, which is the one, that's the one that's looking and using the Cleveland Street. And so they apparently already have a T built in on the Hunter side. And
So they identify, HC Improvement identified problems with the entire length of the line, from Division Street all the way to the treatment plant. And so, I didn't know a lot about concrete cylinder pipe, but if you go to the American Water Works Association website and click on that kind of pipe, it redirects you to a new spot. There are apparently 3 different varieties of that particular pipe. I'm not sure which one they have. But when you start talking about fixing those things, it's a crapshoot.
Well, so you hit why the bypass is so kind of the recommendation at this point is they want to construct that bypass, put it in place, which they think will take 10 to 12 weeks from approval. And then once they get that in place, then that would then allow them to then work on a 30-inch pipe that currently is leaking. The concern is once you start excavating that leak, you're committed. And the challenge is right now, that is the only feed.
Is all eggs in one basket.
Yep, and so.
See,
you
so
don't wanna start mixing up.
they have
things,
new
especially
concrete
at the
cylinder
time.
pipe of a larger diameter from the intake up, I believe, 3,000 feet. They replace that much of the line, then it goes, ties back into the old stuff that was built in 52, right, to the treatment plant. And then from there, again, it goes up to Division Street. But after reading those scenarios that are in that thing, man, whoever you get better really know what they're doing, and you got,
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes bad, it all goes bad fast.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's why they're being very cautious in how they do it, wanna make sure everything's stabilized.
You don't wanna
They
excavate
wanna
that line.
Make sure you're planning, wanna make sure you have a bypass that's installed and working and operational before you start excavating and moving soil, so. I guess the short answer is, when's this leak gonna be fixed? Probably not for
Wow.
10 to 12 weeks at least. Well, actually 10 to 12 weeks before a bypass is put in, and then however long it's gonna take to fix the actual leak and put it back in service. But the idea is you do that during more the late fall, early winter period where your demands are lower. Because regardless, either way, there's gonna have to be a temporary shutdown in order to do that. Whether to tie in on a bypass line, there's gonna be a temporary, they say they can do it at 4, okay, double that, let's time 8, type of deal. And then of course, to repair the 30-inch, that would require a shutdown. And we don't have enough storage to last, and us, Oregon City.
Nobody does.
And so we're not the only ones, but, we've been included in, and we've been coordinating and included in all the different meetings and so on, so, we've had the chance to ask questions of the engineering firm and the general, geotech folks and all that, so that's been working out good. We've stressed to them the importance of making sure we're all coordinating very closely, because.
So I've identified an alternative source for those of us in our neck of the woods. You may want to look at a couple of folks out on May Road. They have some wells down there, literally, so you can just drive south and fill containers, because there are a number of good wells that, help solve that problem, but there's no good solution for us.
So that's, I think I've, the extent of the damage, we're not sure. We think that there may be 3 possible leaks, but we're not positive where and what portion of the pipe. And talked about the repair schedule, and they've got people lined up to do the work, and already talked to a number of different contractors about how to do it. And they all seem to like this bypass idea, so that us more flexibility and time to work on the verbiage.
So the bypass sounds like a Band-Aid bypass,
Well,
Yeah,
not a fixed bypass.
I would-
Yeah,
no, it's just a, yeah,
It's to give you that
one
one
end to
section.
the other, and that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
but,
That'd work.
but the whole thing needs to be evaluated sometime.
No disagreement.
take a lot of money.
All right, so one last thing I have is a staffing item. We do have a person who's accepted the senior finance and accounting specialist position. His name's Ted Abora. And so he'll be starting next Monday, so we've got that position filled. So that's nice to, Carol will be very happy to have that additional help, especially in advance of budget season and so on. And we do have an exec session tonight, so that concludes my report.
I don't see pizza.
Uh-oh.
Like some people get that.
Sunrise folks, except for.
Oh, I tell you what.
I guess it wasn't, I thought there was something we had to vote on, but I guess not.
Nope.
No? Okay. So then, yes, the regular board meeting is adjourned.